Oh, yeah, that is Mr. Thomas Lamay and I getting down on this collabo session number 3 on the goal. And if you didn't catch it, yeah, we're absolutely talking about the book titled The Goal, and it's on the theories of constraints. And there's a lot of depth that we're going to get into there. And Thomas, man, he took us way deep because we started talking about masculinity. We started talking about mental wellness. We started talking about the stigma that we need to break around mental wellness or mental toughness. A lot of us are suffering. We know that our industry is ill and we have a mental health crisis. Until we change the stigma and get courageous and start talking about depression in men and start talking or even asking for help or raising your hand and saying, hey, I have a problem. Until we start doing that, we're going to keep repeating the same darn thing. And I know we're some problem solvers in this industry. So please, I invite you and challenge you to take to heart the ideas that are presented in this conversation. Come up with an action. Like, what is one thing you can do that would contribute to the mental wellness of another man out there? And yep, I am being biased. We are talking about men. We are talking about masculinity. And ladies, please, we need your help too. So maybe you can give us some pointers. Maybe you can set us straight. Maybe you can just check on us once in a while to make sure we're doing okay. That's what we need. And we got to give a shout out to all the patrons out there. If you're listening to this, you can't see this. So you want to go jump over to our YouTube channel and check it out. I'm at a hotel in New Orleans right now recording this intro. And I got a fancy, like, different colored light. And I got another fancy little light here to give it some depth and some shadows. And it's because the patrons' sponsorship and commitment to helping us enhance the image of careers in the trades that enables me to go and get all these little gadgets and add a little extra value, a little extra pizzazz. So patrons, love you very much. Thank you for supporting us and believing in us. The rest of y'all love y'all just as much. And here we go, back to the conversation.
He's wearing the skull guard, you know, the full brim.
Yes.
The skull guard, he's wearing that. So where does that stem from? The popularity of that hard hat is that photo. It's very famous. And then there's the third photo. It's Lewis Hines. He's a very famous photographer from the kind of the Great Depression, but it was from 1920. He's a mechanical worker. He's working on a steam pump, and he's all hunched over, but he's like, his muscles are jacked. The 3 most famous photos they're all men, they're all white, they're not in good ergonomic positions. Like, all of them are hunched over or in like grave peril. This is how we identify in the United States in construction. Like, this is the source code in which we identify on. And it's not to say that being masculine or having masculine qualities is bad. It's not. It's good. I say it's normal to be dirty. It's normal to be not working good ergonomics. It's normal to take risks.
Yes.
And in fact, it's so normal that that's what we see. And the most famous photographs reinforce that. So even not only do we in construction as men identify that, but everybody else in the world, that's what they identify us as being. So if we're not that, it's weird.
Yes. So it's like, if we're not that, we're against it.
Yeah. So if you go against it, you're automatically seen as not normal.
Yeah. Less than.
Yeah. So there's another, I'll just tell you now, I don't know if you read it, but I go after, we've normalized a male stigma before. Pfizer did with Viagra, right?
Yes. It's
now normal to talk about, or at least have an advertisement on TV about erectile dysfunction. So how did we do that? Pfizer had millions of dollars in advertising campaigns, and they made it normal. And over time, society has accepted that, yes, if you have erectile dysfunction as a man, you can take medicine for that. And there's some studies with that, and they found that through the normalization on that, more and more people go and talk about that with their doctors. So it's how are we going to change the stigma in construction? We have to start talking about it.
Yes.
again and again and again and again and again and again, and be weird. And that's what we have to do. If we don't do that, we will not change at all. Facing brutal facts, you have to do it. If you don't face the fact that Herby is the slowest, you won't investigate his backpack. You won't see that he's overloaded. You won't see that he packed too much stuff. And you can't
address the problem.
Yeah, you can't address the problem. Like, you can't take the load off of Herby until you face the facts. So
yes.
And how do we do that? We normalize it.
All right, so we're back after a little bit of a break. How was your vacation, brother?
It's great.
Yeah?
Yeah. I went home. Well, I'm home. I went from where I'm from originally to Nebraska, and I saw family. I saw my parents, and I saw my grandmother.
Nice.
And I saw my aunt and uncle and cousins. It's you only get one. You only get one family.
Yes.
You can choose your friends, but it's good to see people and reconnect and be back and be able to do that and not feel like you're putting people at risk when you're traveling. So it's really good to be back and be able to do that and connect with family members, because it's all you got. At the end of the day, your families are the ones who are closest to you. So one thing I've really kind of recently tried to do is try to make that a priority more than.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? Like right now I'm at the Zen cabin. I'm in a little tiny home that
Zen cabin.
Yeah, that's the name of it, the Zen cabin. You see the little Buddha over here? Let me see if I can give you a real quick tour. There's the stairway up to the bed up top. There's the kitchen, and there's the closets and the door.
Are you in San Antonio or where at?
No, I'm in Canyon Lake, which is just 45, 60 minutes out of San Antonio north, near New Braunfels. But it's, when I went independent and launched my business, that sounds so fancy. One of the commitments I made was to take a few days off at once a month to get creative, to decompress, to just change my environment. And so far I'm batting 3 for 3, but it's uncomfortable, right? Like today, I got here yesterday and I realized I didn't pack my charger for my damn computer. So I drove home. Like if we didn't have this call scheduled, I would have said hell with it. Like I'm gonna more reason to chill. But I said, no, I need to go get it. And I called a buddy of mine that used to work with, Eric Stone. And he's like, you sound like you're on the road. I'm like, yeah, man, like I'm on vacation and I went to get my charger. He's like, Jesse, but if you're on vacation, what do you need your charger for? I'm like, don't judge me, man. I'm trying to build new habits here. But it's so much time that we've spent, right? Like grinding in 12 hours, 16 hours. I got this, I got to deliver. Blah. Taking time off is not easy.
Yeah, it's good.
But with repetition, we can get there.
Yes. Well, you need two things. You need a reinforcing cycle.
Yes.
Right? And then you need a balancing cycle. So it sounds like you're doing the balancing part now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. Good. So we're at chapter 11?
Chapter 11. Yeah, we're just tearing through this book.
You know what?
This is going to be a 25, maybe 30 part podcast. Maybe it'll just go forever. We'll just once we hit the end of it, we'll just loop back.
Just start back over with the sixth edition.
It's so like the book. It's so good. I mean, now I tell people, I'm like, we're talking about the goal, and they're like, the goal. Like, I'm like, you don't know?
Yep.
Bro, let me tell you about. Actually, no. I was gonna come out, and you have to listen. We're gonna get in the juicy part, and it's juicy because a lot of the theory now comes into practice, and and so if you're on a journey, we're gonna talk about a journey too.
Yeah.
Some Boy Scouts. But if you're on a journey, the first thing you have to do is you have to be open to learn. You have to be open to learn. So like if I'm not open to learn, then I'll shut it down. So first thing I have to do is be open to learn. And Alex Rogo does that when he's like, I got to get this Jonah guy. He's my old college professor. And now Jonah is this like He's like, yourself, this highly paid, jet-setting business consultant, globe-trotting. And did you know Gold Rat consulted with Amazon?
No.
Rat? Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. And Jeff Bezos would do kind of what we're doing here in a way, where they would get executives together and they would do study action teams. And one of the books in the early days of Amazon was The Goal.
Yeah.
And if we're affiliated with a few Amazon. I can't exactly say what they are, but let's say that they're projects. And now you kind of see the connection. There's real connection there, because so it's interesting. So I know this stuff works.
Yeah.
What we're about to talk about is life changing for me, because it changed my paradigm. And your paradigm is how you see the world, and we all have different ones, but it's the center of your experience, your beliefs, your thoughts, and your mood at the current time. And that's whatever that is at that very specific moment. That's your paradigm. And if it shifts through a changing of your your mindset and your attitude and your behaviors, you can change your paradigm. And this book helped me kind of see that through the series of experiments that Alex and the team over there at Unico goes through. So let's you want to just get into it?
Let's do it, baby. I'm excited. I want a paradigm shift.
Yeah. There's a G in there. The G is silent. All right. So I think it starts off chapter 11. It's him and his wife. And have you ever woke up? Because his son wakes him up and he's like, "Hey, Dad."
What are you doing?
Actually, no. He comes home. I'm sorry. He comes home and he's like, "Oh, by the way, I have to go. I know we had this really romantic weekend, and I promise I've been working like crazy hours and blah, blah, blah. I've been making excuses, but I have one more excuse at the last second. I have to take my son on a camping trip because I promised him and his scout troop." So he starts it off, and this is his wife, Julie. She goes, "Thanks for the advance notice. If I'd known earlier, I would have told you," I say. "Everything is unexpected with you lately," she says. Ooh. "Don't I always tell you when I've got trips coming up?" She fidgets next to the bedroom door. I'm packing an overnight bag which lies on the bed. We're alone. Sharon is down the street at a friend's house, so she just bails on him. And I can understand why. This is
you're
like set the whole week up. And now you're going to bail on a romantic weekend with your wife. Davey's at band practice. Like, you're just like having this internal conversation with yourself. When is it going to end? He's like, "I stopped midway from some underwear from a drawer." It's so specific. I'm getting irritated by the questions because we just went over the whole thing 5 minutes ago. Why is it so hard for her to understand? Julie, why can't you read my brain?
Yep.
Julie, I don't know. I've got a lot of problems to solve. More fidgeting. She doesn't like it. Occurs to me that she doesn't trust me or something. This is the moment where issues at work, they trickle right in to your life. Whether you try it, and we talked about the membrane. There is no membrane. And if you have a membrane, it's permeable. That means that there's stuff that can flow through it. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that's me. This is why I have multiple scrum boards in my house, because I forget. And I still, Angeline, I love you to death. I will go on record, but I often forget to tell you things, and I often forget to listen. So we have to write stuff down and constantly remind ourselves with pieces of paper in the kitchen, in the bedroom, wherever. Just get it up there, get it up, start talking about it. Yeah. Have you ever had a problem that you brought home and it affected your personal relationship so much that the other person stopped trusting you?
Oh, 100%. Like, I don't know, 80% of my career, like just working. I think, well, we have the book, the Lean in Love book, which is kind of based on that. And for me, where it was real, that's a big anchor point, not the book necessarily, but how the book came about. it was a kick in the teeth when me and that person were having arguments that I've had within other relationships. And like for me, the way it registered was like, oh, it's not like they don't trust me. It's not that she doesn't trust me anymore. It's that she 100% trusts me to put work first. Like she gave up on hoping that she would be a priority. And now she just expects me to make work the priority. Like that was like, damn it, man. I did it again.
Did you do it like Alex and make a promise that your butt can it's a Top Gun reference. You're making cash checks. What is it? The check?
The reference I think of is I let my alligator mouth outweigh my hummingbird behind. Right? Like I committed to do something that I could not deliver on. And I had this one discussion, maybe it was a debate, maybe not. I rescheduled on a date. I was meeting somebody, we're going to go to dinner and we're going to go dancing. And that afternoon, it was about noon, I text her and say, hey, like I got to reschedule. I'm going to work late and blah, blah, blah. And a couple of weeks later, her friend that connected us was like, hey man, I can't believe you stood my friend up. I was like, stood her up? I didn't stand her up. Like I called her, like I texted her and then we talked and she said, okay, it's fine. We'll reschedule. So I still don't know if that qualifies as standing somebody up. But the fact is, that's just another data point proving that I have always let work spill into my personal life. And it's always been a priority. And then it's funny because then I'll get frustrated. Like, why don't let's go do something fun? Like, or why can't we plan something fun? Well, because you always flake out, Jesse. That's why we can't plan something fun.
See, it's the erosion.
Yes, the erosion. Perfectly said.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And if you're doing 5S in your relationship, you would have an indicator of erosion when you did your standardization.
Yes.
Or even sorting. Because when you do sorting, be like, hey, I have this thing. We have this planned out weekend on Saturday morning. We're gonna go to brunch. This is a very Texas thing. It's everywhere. Who am I kidding?
Yeah.
We're gonna go to brunch and be like, well, you can't go to brunch because you have the thing with Davey on Saturday morning. And you're like, you're right.
Never mind.
I can't make that promise. So
yes.
It's Captain Tom Stinger in Top Gun. The captain, he's like the captain of the air wing. He's like to Maverick, he's like, you're writing checks that your butt can't cash.
Yes.
Your body can't cash.
Yes. I got another.
That's so plug 5S in relationships. And I'm not any kind of person to be held on a high standard of doing this, but it's a practice. And,
it's a practice. Yes.
I would say, and that's the thing about trust, and that's how they start out chapter 11. This is a trust in relationships. It's only given. You can only give trust. It's only given.
Yes.
You can't buy it.
Nope.
You can't hope for it. You can't like. Maybe for a very short term, you can trick people into trusting you. Very, very short term.
Yes.
But now trust, you have to give it. And by giving it, meaning like you make a promise, you stick to it. That's how you give it.
That's that say-do ratio, right?
Yes. That's the trust.
Yes.
So the readers of the Goal, let's go back to the book before we get too crazy. But the readers of the Goal, they're introduced to, especially in chapter 11, you're introduced to theory of constraints. TOC, if you're like legit.
Yeah.
If you're in the lean and agile community, you call it TOC. I call it theory of constraints. You're introduced in chapter 11. We're going to really get into it. But chapter 11, my kind of summary title is Dependent Events and Statistical Fluctuations. Ooh. Dependent events, that means there's an event, then there's something that's dependent on that second. So the second event, you need the first event to happen for the second event. It happens on airplanes. And then statistical fluctuations, meaning that like this is the real world. Even in robotics, even in Amazon, if things don't work completely exactly the same, even if you try to do it.
Yep.
There are statistical fluctuations. So even if you make the most beautiful plan, statistical fluctuations, that's Murphy.
Yes.
So Alex goes to New York City. He goes to the hotel lobby. If you've seen the movie, have you seen the movie?
No,
Okay.
you told me there's a movie. I'm like, man,
there's a film. There's only, you could buy it from the Gold Rat Institute. I think that's where you can buy it.
Okay.
Probably on VHS.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a few clips on YouTube if you want to go, the listeners want to go check that out. The Goal, just type in the Gold Rat, and there's some clips. One of the clips is this scene where they're in New York City, jet setting. Jesse here, I gotta chase you down, so I gotta go find you in New York.
Yeah.
On your way to the United Nations or something.
Yeah.
Over coffee. So they meet over coffee, and they both sit down, and the waiter's like, hey, you can't just order coffee. And they're like, well, we want a pot each.
Yeah.
And a gallon of cream. So they talk about the two most important concepts of the goal. And that's the theory of constraint. So this is what Jonah says. He says, most of the time, your struggle for high efficiencies is taking you in the opposite direction of your goal.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Okay, let's break this down. Most of the time, your struggle for high efficiency is taking you in the opposite direction over your goal. So it literally, you trying to have efficiency, and you're struggling with that. Whatever you're doing to make something more efficient, most of the time, it's the actual opposite thing you should do.
Yeah.
So his advice was like, whatever you're doing, do the exact opposite. So if you have a huge ego and you hear that, oh man. So that's the first thing he says. And the second thing he says, a plant which everyone is working all the time is very inefficient. Where everyone is working all the time, it is very inefficient. And why is that? Dependent events and statistical fluctuations. So I want to talk about, here we go. Gold Rat in chapter 11 lays out the old critical path method versus production systems argument. He just lays it out there. He says, if everybody's working in a critical path method, you are incredibly inefficient. And this is an argument. This isn't fact.
Right.
I'm not going to go there, but I'm just saying there is a theory as that we're going to talk about that if everyone is working exactly, that means if you have activity A, and activity A is 2 days, and activity B is 1 day, you need 2 days plus 1 day. That's 3 days for those activities. That's dependent events.
Yeah.
So if you think of a process chart with boxes lined up in columns and rows. So if you can imagine a process map, and you have a box and a box and a box, kind of like a pole plan, or if you've seen a process map where you have your series of events, and then you have your, if they're happening at the same time, you can stack them. So you have columns and rows. And then if you connect those boxes with arrows, that says when this activity, and then this activity, and then this activity, and then this activity, and then this activity. If this happens, and then this happens, if this, then that, if this, then that. Logic. Yep. It's literally logic. It utilizes, now CPM utilizes statistical techniques to manage defined activities of, let's say, a project. That's where we live in. We live in a project. But the strong emphasis, I'm getting choked up, so trying to make an emphasis. You have to make a strong emphasis on defined activities.
Yes.
Defined, definition. It is, you have to emphasize definition. If you don't understand the definition of the what's in that activity bar, the description part, your logic might be flawed. So I have a couple examples that I wrote down. Install foundations. That's an event or an activity. Weld steel decking. Tape and finish drywall. Energize electrical system with permanent power. That might be a milestone. Yeah, that could be a milestone. But these are activities that are defined. They have a definition. Like you can define what install foundations is. Like it has parts and it has things like, so you can put time to that. And then there's dependent events. You can't do this before you do that. So dependent events, if we plan that way, we create two phenomenon according to Jonah. The first is dependent events. I keep talking about that. A series of events that must take place before another begins, right? So it has to take place ahead. So that would be I'm going to get this. There's going to be schedulers that are going to slaughter me. But a dependent event in critical path method is a finished to start. Fundamentally, there's probably more than that. But fundamentally, I have to do activity A has to finish before activity B starts, and then there's a logic tie that's between the two.
Yeah.
So that's the first phenomenon. You have to do that. It's like trains in a car. Imagine if there was a train. We're going to start talking about trains here. But it's for a train. Well, you're in Texas. You see trains all the time.
Oh, yeah. My mom lives like less than a block away from the railroad tracks.
Yes. I live on the East Coast. I see trains all the time, too. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you're waiting for a train, you see this phenomenon happening in front of you, right? Because you see the engine, and then you see all the cars go by it, and they're all tied together with logic, or they're actually tied together mechanically.
Yes.
But the total time that train is in front of you is from the time in which the arm goes down to all the train cars and engines and tanks or whatever it is, until sometimes a caboose. I think they got rid of those years ago.
Yeah.
Until that last train car leaves and the arm goes up. That's the critical path of that sequence of events. Those are all dependent events. All those cars have to go by. So that's the first phenomenon. The second phenomenon is a little more squishy. It's statistical fluctuations. And I'm probably going to offend a whole bunch of like really smart mathematicians and people with math degrees. And I barely even count with my fingers and toes, so bear with me. But statistical fluctuations, the length of events and outcomes are not completely deterministic. You can't determine exactly to the micromillisecond how long that train will go in front of you, because it depends. It depends.
Yes.
Depends on traffic, depends on weather, depends on even like the temperature and humidity affect the length of the train because of mechanics of materials and temperature. So you can't completely determine. You can get pretty close, but if you've ever been in this phenomenon, you've waited for an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes the airplane is not only picking you up and flying to your destination. It's usually flying in from somewhere else and landing and offloading the people that were on there, and then you load on there and you go away. So oftentimes the weather, just a statistical fluctuation, is different from geography location to geography location. So there might be a delay, or sometimes there's construction on the road, or sometimes there's statistics. So you can't perfectly predict with statistical fluctuations anything.
Yes.
So nothing is deterministic. Nothing is deterministic. And I'll go back to my example of the hoist.
Yes.
So, and oftentimes when we do vertical construction, there's it's pretty common knowledge that when we do more floors, we should get faster because we're just getting better at what we do. And that's partly true. That is partly true. People do understand there's patterns and behaviors, and you start to communicate better. Like there's that. There's probably laws that I'm offending production people now. Production laws. But there's also statistical fluctuations that work against you, because it's like it takes longer to get up to that higher location. It takes longer for cranes to lift. It takes longer because the higher up you go, the wind changes.
Yep.
And there's lots of factors that we now have to take in consideration, but oftentimes we don't. We just say, hey, we're on this 5-day cycle. We just get better.
Yes.
So that's the issue with CPM. I think it's fine. It's a fine method to do primary planning. I think because it's very effective, it's very quick. There's computer programs that work now. This is probably shocking, Jesse, right now that I'm a proponent of CPM, but I use it all the time. And in construction, it's a very effective manner to figure out your combination of dependent events and fluctuations, because you can run what if reports and all these kinds of things, and you can add in logic and you add in buffers. You can do that, but one thing you can't do, you can't math away from the real world. You can't math it. You can't plan it. You can't. You can put in contingencies. That's all you can do.
Yes.
But it's not to say that computerized logic and critical path is wrong. I use it. I've looked at it today. It's not wrong or bad. However, it's extremely risky to only put your primary decision-making process in that single method. It's extremely risky, because if you're only utilizing a very rigid system, to make modifications to that rigid system is incredibly time
Oh God, yes.
consuming, because you have to go in, and it's all manual. You have to change the cars on the train.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even changing the cars on the train is a very manual process, and it's hard to do. Creates delays, it creates all that. And so we're going to talk about why don't put all your eggs in a CPM basket. What do you think about that? What do you think? What's your take? I know. I loved your take when you were talking with Lean Builders, Keon and Joe, and that was, you had a great comment. I'll just let you.
I don't remember.
You killed the argument. You said it was a respect and trust problem.
Yeah.
This is chapter 11 in the goal.
Yeah. I mean, so I remember that conversation was, we started talking about this CPM thing, and it's just my observation, and I just default to it. And I think it's because of my background as a tradesman and working out there, kind of being the victim of these schedules. It's like we spend all this damn time talking about schedules and what's the best scheduling method and who cares? Because we have a people problem. What we need to be worried about is taking care of the men and women that come out and do this damn work. The life that we're stealing from them because of poorly designed work. The life that we're stealing from them because we're trying to math reality.
Math it away. Yeah.
You can't math it away. Like, dude, that's like we're going to make t-shirts of that. You can't math it away. Like, you got to account for all of the stuff. You got to be prepared to absorb it and adjust to it. But instead we say, but the schedule says, okay, great. But guess what? Reality is telling us something else.
If everybody is working in your plant, Alex, you are incredibly inefficient.
Yes, people are busy, and well, the schedule says you got to start here, so go ahead and start. It's like, yeah, but the tape and floater still's got to get up there and do their fire taping, and I hang that duct, and it's going to cut them off. Well, too bad, because they're behind. They should have had that done. Okay, now let's just elevate the risk to their life.
Yeah. Now we just designed a system in which a taper has to go and climb on top of a duct to do his job.
Yes, exactly.
And
because
take a risk.
The schedule set.
Yeah, because the schedule set. So why is it not important? Why is it completely inefficient if everybody's working? Everybody's working. Hey, everybody's jamming. Why are we so inefficient? So how often do you hear of projects going longer than originally planned?
Oh my God. So I'm going to add in overtime as going longer.
Going longer than the original plan.
Yep. I think it's easier to think about the times that it didn't happen. Like all the time, always going longer than originally planned. I used to have this discussion. Well, I've had it several times with people because they're celebrating whatever they negotiated as the extended duration of the project. And we made it on schedule. Like,
we made it 3 weeks early.
Yeah. Like, it's not an accomplishment. Like, that's a contractual obligation. Yes, you made it on schedule, but how many dates did you cancel? How many ball games did you miss? Right? How much real life did you sacrifice to make this date that you're claiming was the date, which we all know was an extension from the original plan?
That's right.
Short answer is very, very few.
And so the second question, how often do you hear about projects completed on time without the use of overtime or expediting or pressure?
Never. I can't say that I've ever heard of that, even heard of it.
So it's even less than the first question.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's a good one. And then the third question is, how often do you hear of projects going over budget, over the original budget?
Oh my God. That's a high frequency, but I have been a part of projects that didn't go over budget.
Fewer.
But
is it less than the projects that are completed on time without overtime and expediting?
No. I think
more?
I've had more experiences where the projects came within budget or even outperformed the budget with overtime, like all that other stuff.
So what you're saying is like some of that could have been priced in?
Possibly. I may have weighed in on some of that.
Yeah, no. So that's what Goldant was saying. He said that like we plan for this. We plan for the inefficiencies. Like the inefficiency is normalized.
Yes.
And that's not to say there's a lot of people that work really hard on keeping projects, and like I don't want to like trash on construction industry. It's hard.
No.
This is real world. We work in the elements. We work at heights. This is no joke. We got a tough job. So
yes.
That's chapter 11. It's basically Jonah's like, two things.
Yep.
There's two nice little nuggets, and he drives off in his limo, Mr. Consultant. He drives off into his limo to probably a high-rise, Fortune 500 company in New York City. But so we go on to chapter 12, and this is writing checks your relationships can't cash. And I wrote this summary like around the time when like y'all were doing regular live streams with 5S and relationships. So like when I was putting this together, this little summary here, this was like very front of mind. So thank you for the influence. But chapter 12 is thinking about, he's kind of like reflecting on a time before, like, you go down memory lane. He goes, there's a guy I heard about in Unico who came home from work one night. He walked in, his wife had taken everything, the kids, the dog, the goldfish, the furniture, the carpets, everything. Well, she actually left him two things, the clothes and a note written in lipstick on the bathroom mirror, which says, goodbye, you bastard. Which is a good song by Black Hawk, by the way. Goodbye says it all.
Yep.
Big red goodbye with lipstick on the wall. Hey, what's your favorite song about Texas? Adam?
Yeah. I guess
country.
I don't know if this one's about Texas. So the easy one is all my exes live in Texas, which is
that's easy.
Right. No longer true. That is not a true song. So that doesn't count. The other one, I don't know if it even mentions Texas, but it's a country song. And it's the kind of the riff is, I'm too young to be this damned old. Yeah. Right. And when that song came out, is it Garth Brooks?
Yeah. Well, maybe he sings one rendition of it, but yeah, it's good. That's a good jam.
Yes. And I had just turned, I must have been 30. It was in like between 29 and 31 years old. And I had just like had my second divorce, like all kinds of these were like outcomes of my behavior with my relationship, rather, with work. The way I coped with the stress and funk of work led to me before 30 years old I was too young to be that damned old. Like most of the people I knew, they were 50 and 60 and had the types of problems that I had. And I wasn't even 30 yet. And I was on the fast track.
Yes. There's a good line in that song I really like. It's talking about a worn out tape from Chris Ledoux. And my sister lives in Buffalo, Wyoming. On the way to Buffalo, you drive through Casey, Wyoming. It's a map dot, but that's where the Ledouxs are from. And there's a memorial there in Casey. So, but yeah, that's a great jam. But yes. Yeah, so goodbye says it all. Like that is a profound statement. So on page 130, Alex's wife, she makes this statement: your job has always been on the line. Always. So if you're such a marginal employee, why do they keep giving you promotions and more money? Ouch! Say like, oh man. So does this sound familiar? Like, if you've ever lived on a razor's edge at work and still get promoted and raises?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, this was my second divorce happened on this project. The whole entire time I thought I was going to be fired. Like, we paid out, I mean, we were in the red about 400 grand in the red. Like, not, we spent all the estimated margin and paid an additional 400 grand to finish the project.
Oh, wow.
And so the entire time I'm thinking like, man, I'm going to get fired. And I was working crazy hours just trying to make up wherever I mean, just ridiculous. At the end of it, I was divorced. I'd been arrested again for DWI. Like, my life was falling apart. And I remember we had like a debrief with the team, and I'm like, man, I'm sorry. Like, I completely understand if y'all got to let me go. And they're like, let you go. Like, we put like, you're the reason why we didn't lose double that. Like, you're getting promoted. I'm like, promoted? What? Like, I don't want to have to do this to get promoted. Right. But that was the firefighting was what was.
That's the expectation.
Yes.
Similar story. I've never been divorced. I have some commitment issues.
Yeah.
So, but same thing. I've always felt like the social or the work pressure on me. I'm just like, I don't get this. I don't
Yep.
like make this happen and jam and get on people's cases. And
Yep.
like, just do the things that aren't healthy. They're not building relationships. They're tearing down. I'm sure I've like contributed to people's, like, they've taken like the interaction that we had at work. They've taken that situation home, and I've been promoted and given raises this whole time.
Yes.
Time, like all along. I'm like, every time I've been promoted and raised, the next cycle is like you feel back. You're like, oh man, I'll get canned tomorrow.
Yep.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yes.
Vicious cycle.
Yes.
And like Alex legit calls out, or is Alex's wife legit calls him out on it, and he's like, damn. He's like, I gotta put some perspective into this. But I will say that, I've worked for many companies, and they're all good companies. Everyone.
Yes.
But it's at that moment when you make that connection between, is this actually worth it?
Yeah.
And like when you make the decision that no, it's not worth it, that's when you move on. This has been. And all the companies I work for, they're all great. They're all super profitable and successful. But in that situation where you get put in a box and says, hey, is this situation is worth more than your livelihood? I'll choose my livelihood all day.
Yeah.
All day. And I haven't made that choice 100%. I'm probably batting less than 500 in that realm.
Yeah.
But I've written many checks that my relationships can't cash.
Yeah.
So now I do like the concept of like a personal bank account,
yep.
or a social bank account, or a trust bank account, whatever you want to call it. It's an extreme ownership. Every time that you go and take a withdrawal, it's lowered. The account is lowered.
Yes.
If you have your account balance is zero. If you have zero trust, if you have zero relationship, you have zero whatever respect, there's no margin. You can't get credit in a relationship. It's impossible. You might be able to take a what is it, a payday loan for a week.
High cost.
Yeah, but the cost, yeah, it's true. It's so the payday loan from a financial standpoint is like the interest rate is extremely high. And it's the same way with in a social interaction. If you try to get ahead or whatever with nefarious means or social pressure or stress or use some masculine behavior, in which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
To do the chest bumping thing. We've all been there. It's ego. That only works for a very limited amount of time. So does fear. So does pressure. So
yes.
Alex's wife legit calls him out on that. That's chapter 12. And that plays into the rest of the book because he walks into the next chapter, which is the hike, the famous. He walks into that with that in the front of his mind, right? So
yes,
and that's very important. And not many people make that connection. And I actually had to read this book many times to make that connection. So that's right in the front of his mind. It's like, oh, I got issues at home. It's like, I'm going to get fired. They're going to close a plant. Like, it's going to ruin this, like, and this is his hometown. And these are people's livelihoods. And there's like, people he cares about. Like, the pressure is on Alex, man. He's feeling it. But he's still got to be like a dad to his son, Dave. So why don't you just do chapter 13?
Let's do it.
I'll do it off my phone. This is awesome. Chapter 13, the hike. This is the famous hike. Spoiler alert. And if you've listened to this point and you haven't read the book, stop now.
Read the book.
Go read the book. Go to Audible.
Yes.
Because now we will, like everything before, you can kind of be like, okay, I get it. From here on out, we're going to lose people. So please pause. You can always come back to this, but pause. Go at least listen to chapters 13 to 20. So chapter 13 is the hike. Davy's son wakes Alex up in bed, reminding his commitment to the Boy Scout troop. They got to hike 10 miles and then camp overnight and then hike back 10 miles. So he gets there, and I've only been the scout, the kid, not having ever been like the scout master. If people who are listening, or I don't know if you've done it, people who work with children, thank you, no joke. But these moments, these hikes, these little learning experiences, I remember they're greatly impactful. So like the pressure's on.
Yeah,
like these little moments, they add up to a person's life. And if they're good, it's reinforcing. If they're bad, it's the same way. They'll be scarred for life. So he's like, oh, I'm worried about my life and my job, but I still got to be like, the pressure is on. I got to perform. And all the other parents bail. And the scoutmaster that's not supposed to be there flakes out. So like Alex on his own with a whole troop of Boy Scouts. And I guess what are Boy Scouts, like 8, 10?
Yeah, yes.
So they're young boys, and they're wild animals.
Yes.
You got to keep them in check. So Alex, he starts to figure it out. He's like, all right, we got to get 10 miles. He does some quick math in his head. He's trying to math himself out of the situation.
Yes.
He goes walking 2 miles an hour, which is about how fast an average person walks. At this rate, we should cover 10 miles in 5 hours. 2 miles an hour. That's a brisk walk. You probably do some treadmill work, so you hit that 2.0. It's not hard, but it's not putzing around.
Right.
So we should be able to cover 10 miles in 5 hours. That's dependent events and trying to map himself out of the situation. It's 8:30 right now. Figure an hour and a half for breaks and lunch. And we'll get to Devil's Gulch by 3:00, no sweat. So let's stop here and talk about a glorious phase of construction. It's the part where we set the baseline schedule. It's glorious because it's at the beginning where we all get along. We're excited.
Everybody's going to make money.
Opportunity. And it's the articles in the newspaper. Did you see it? It's like the news is there. The mayor's going to show up. The governor. I've had the president come multiple times. No, there's just like humble brag there. But there's ribbons involved. There's shovels. There's all kinds of people are excited. Like it's this feel good time. This is exciting. So they call that optimism bias.
Yes.
And optimism bias is a cognitive bias. It's a trick your brain. It's a trick our brains have tricked us for the entirety of the known history of humankind. It's the tendency for individuals to be overly bullish about the outcomes of planned actions. You ever get that way?
Oh, I used to all the time. And like the way I reconciled the fact that the outcome didn't happen was because everybody else didn't follow the plan. Like, it wasn't my fault. It was everybody else's fault. But now, I should say maybe here in the past 3 years or so, things are going to happen the way they're going to happen. And creating the conditions to facilitate learning, adaptability, and growth is where I choose to put my energy now, right? Like if I can focus my energy on creating the conditions for people to build relationships, to learn, to grow, to adapt, we'll get there when we get there. Now, but my work is different, right? My work has been helping people learn new techniques and new methods and form cohesive teams. I can't put that on a schedule. I mean, when I look back and reflect, I've seen some teams, it seems like around the 6-week mark, they start getting into flow and becoming more reliable in their communication and their commitments and all of that. And I don't know why it's 6 weeks. I really don't. But that's only true if the team doesn't change, because you put somebody else in there, you take somebody out, the power dynamics shift, the whole, like, you almost start all over again.
Yeah. But oftentimes, your work is a little bit different than mine.
Yep. Oftentimes
when we start a project, the experts that do the organizing and setting the baseline schedule, I got some, they're good people, man. They're hard workers, and they're incredibly biased.
Yes.
And it's not a fault of it's just how brains
natural.
Work.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's I'll plug another book, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yes.
Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah.
We may cover that book in a later series. Who knows?
Yeah.
That one's beyond me. We need some experts on that one. It talks about bias.
Yep.
In his book, and he calls optimism bias when we're excited. And we're like, and that's when here's the thing about being excited. This is also the time where we set the baseline schedule. So Alex is doing that. He's like, we're going to get there at 3 p.m. I'm excited. I'm full of energy. It's 8:30 in the morning. I just ate a delicious breakfast.
Yes.
It's cool out. I'm feeling optimism. Like I'm feeling some optimism. Like we got it, people. We got it.
Yep.
Nothing has happened yet. It's just the way it goes. And when we get in the grip of optimism, including experts, we are unaware of that we're optimistic. And sometimes maybe we are. We've become aware that we're like, hey, they call it the honeymoon phase oftentimes.
Yeah.
And we make decisions based on an ideal vision of the future.
Yes.
Rather than on rational weighing of realistic gains, losses, and probability. We're like, oh, this is awesome. We're gonna have this set up, and we have these beautiful logistics plans, and sometimes they're animated.
Yep.
It's just like, hey, this is gonna work perfectly, and we're excited, and we get that in our brains, and it programs our brains. So when we're setting the plan, or we're making the decisions about duration and logic and all of the things that we're about to go do. We haven't done any of them. We're mentally imperished. We're mentally biased when we make those decisions. Is that terrifying to you? It is me.
No, here's what's terrifying to me, because I think that's a natural thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm going to take a jab at Jennifer right now, because she's not going to hear this for a month or so anyways. But, we started working on the book, and we've been working on it, and we're in the editing phase. We're on the home stretch. Like right now, you can order the book. Right now, the plumber's edition is out, meaning there's a ton of typos. There's a ton of gaps. The flow's jacked up, but we're refining it, right? We're getting the grammar and the English and all that punctuation. And so I got super excited because things were clicking along. I didn't anticipate, or I didn't account for the realities of the edit time is not big. It's the life stuff that keeps happening between Jen, myself, and Kim, who's helping us with the book. Like, she has a business, I have a business. Like, I didn't account for those things. So it's taken longer than I wanted it to take. But what's scary to me is not when people are planning in ideal situations, these fabricated ideal situations, which is what I did. What's scary is there are those experts out there that are putting together a schedule and saying there's no way this is going to be a nightmare. And somebody within the organization is saying it's okay. They're going out and making checks that their butt can't cash. They're committing to the client. Yes, we can do it. And everybody that's going to be doing that job is telling them there ain't no way.
Yeah,
That's the scary part.
And they'll do due diligence. They'll go out and we'll talk to experts with trades and with designers.
Yes.
And third parties.
Yes.
And the building department and the county, yes. Right? And we're all incredibly biased. So we have to understand that.
We underestimate benefits. We underestimate costs.
Yeah.
We involuntarily spin scenarios of success and overlook the potential for mistakes and miscalculations. Uh-huh. It is counterintuitive.
Yes. You know, and, I heard Tony Robbins. I think I heard Tony Robbins say it, and I'm not sure where it originated. But anyways.
Oh, I'm digging.
Yes. Oh, there it is. Man, you got the library ready to unshakable.
I probably should stop doing this because I'm going to.
No, it's awesome. It's perfect. Yeah. No, the quote I heard was, we overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, and we underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. And I was like, oh my God, that is so dead on. Like, I like, get big ideas and I gotta get all this stuff done. Nope, in a year. But if I look back and reflect on the decade, like, holy moly, look at all the stuff that I got done, right? And so maybe it's that failure to account for all of the stuff that's going to impact my plan. But when I look at it over a broader time horizon, those impacts really aren't that big. And I underestimated what I could do, because I don't know anybody that really spends a lot of time, maybe excluding business planning, as an individual development plan. What am I going to target a decade down the road, right? In terms of growth, like I can target income, I can target collecting junk, right? Like cars and boats and whatever, and my fleet of limousines. But in terms of personal growth, that's not anything I've ever thought about. Like, what am I how will I better serve in 10 years? To what degree will I impact other human beings in 10 years? Like, that's the question.
Yeah, that just blew my mind.
Dude, I went off the rails.
I guess that was Tony Robbins, but still, yeah, wow. I lost my train of thought, but but it's true. It's true. So we set, and it's not to deride pre-construction. Man, we got some great pre-construction people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they can take a napkin sketch and be accurate within like 10 or 15%. That's crazy. Yes. So pre-construction people, like, thank you. It is not a easy job. It's completely, and it must be very frustrating oftentimes. But and the reason why is because you're working in a highly biased environment.
Yep.
It's designed that way. And if we didn't, you can't say that if we can't make plans in an unbiased environment, it's impossible.
Right.
It's like impossible. We would never set any goals or set any durations, and then it would just be chaos. Yes. We have to make those decisions, but we also have to understand, according to the goal and according to Daniel here, or Dr. Nobel Prize winner, that you have to design you have to understand that, hey, we're biased here. Oftentimes we might overlook the fact that we might run into problems.
Yes.
We might have issues, or there might be a problem in the supply chain. So we have to understand that. That's kind of the point. And that's the point that Alex fails in his initial plan.
Yes.
In the hike. Totally whiffs on that one. But he's gonna learn. The hard way.
Yes,
he's gonna learn the hard way. But he's gonna learn. So let's go back to the book. So they're hiking with children in a forest. This has to be terrifying. This is the 80s, so probably not so much. But you're doing a Boy Scout hike with a group of Boy Scouts, and they're hiking. You get them in a line, and they're making the line. And Alex is like, after a few minutes, I turn and look back. The columnist of Scouts is spread out. Instead of a yard between boys, there are now larger gaps, some larger than others. Alex decides by himself, by the way. There's no staff sergeants in this column. He assigns the lead scout, Ron, to set the pace. He's like, all right, nobody passes Ron. He's got the map. Understand? Everybody understand? Nobody pass Ron. Ron's in the lead. He's our lead scout. And then he sees this fat kid, and he already looks a little winded.
Yeah.
And he's way in the back. Behind him he's not all the way in the back. Behind the fat kid is the rest of the group, and they're stuck because they're walking down a single path.
Yep.
He says, "What's your name?" Kid says, "Herby."
Herbie.
So let me frame Herby for a minute. Number one, he is a human Boy Scout.
Yes.
But he's a different shape than the other Scouts. He's not typical. Two, he's got the same function. He's a human Boy Scout, and he's hiking. He's got the same function as the other process steps. Three, he's walking the trail at a different pace. And Alex describes him like he would walk, and then he would noticeably get tired, so he'd slow down, but then the gap would get big, and people would be like, "Hey, Herby, you're holding us up," so he'd run.
Yep.
So he's walking at a different pace, statistically, maybe, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
4, he's bogged down with issues. He's tired, he's hot, he's heavy, he's bogged down with things. He's got this big, heavy rucksack on.
And the stress.
Yeah.
Like
so
the stress. Yes.
So others are blaming Herby.
Yes. Yes.
For their own for the source of their own delay. And then 6, Herby feels that stress.
Yes.
And he's trying to make up the difference, because he's getting behind. He starts by running. This is the person who's
can't walk.
Overweight. I'm overweight, so I can feel the pain. You're like, oh, I gotta pick up the pace, and you start running, but you're already tired, so it's like, or you're a runner.
Yes.
Right. So do you try to maintain a
consistent pace?
Very consistent. But why is that important?
To conserve energy, right? Because the speeding up and the slowing down exhausts my energy. Like I learned the last marathon I ran, I discovered that when I listen to music, my pace varies based on the music. I wasn't my coach at the time. She told me, she's like, "Jason, why do you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Let's look at your times." I'm like, "Oh, wow." So the last one, I listened to a book for the first 20 miles, and my pace was solid, like mile after mile after mile after mile. And it keeps me from speeding up and slowing down and speeding up and slowing down, because even though I was slowing down, it's still costing me energy.
Are you telling me that the fluctuation is making you less efficient?
What's that?
The fluctuations are making you less efficient?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Did we just prove a theory? Perhaps. Anyways.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad you're a marathon runner, because I was going to use that analogy, but I'm like, I can't. Like, I don't have that.
Oh, yeah.
So back to the book and back to Alex, and he goes, we start out again. We haven't gone 30 yards before I notice gaps, starting all over again. Damn it. We've got to be running and stopping all day long if this keeps up. Half the troop is liable to get lost if we can't stay together.
Yeah.
Children.
Yes.
These are people's children, and they're getting stretched out in the wilderness. Oh man. So Alex does rapid retrospective. He's a good manager. He knows when to do a retrospective, which I actually give him major props.
Yeah.
So he stops it. I don't know if he stops, but he's doing this in his brain. He's like, every time Herby gets a step behind, he runs for extra step. Got it. Mental note. I see Davy slow down for a few seconds, adjusting his pack straps. If one of the boys takes a step that's half an inch shorter than the lead scout takes, the length of the whole line could get affected. Right?
Yep.
Because if the lead scout is taking regular steps and somebody behind him is taking a shorter step after step after step after step gets shorter.
Yes.
Or
yes.
I guess the line gets longer. Don't these minor differences, though, don't they average out? He's asking himself this question.
Yeah.
And he said, can I, at the end of the line, shorten the overall length of the line? Because Alex eventually he goes to the back of the line. He's got to like focuses.
Right.
He's got to look at all the children. He's like, if I can shorten the gap because I'm at the end of the line. Like I'm the caboose, but I'm the last in line, so I can only catch up to the kid in front of me. So he can only shorten like a limited amount. So he makes the connection to the plan's production. He goes, each of the troops is a set of dependent events. Does it matter what order we're in? We have dependent events no matter if we switch the order of the boys, right? If you put Davy in the middle, you put him, it's just everybody is walking single file. We can't change. Nobody can pass each other because you can't. I suppose you could, but you'd spend more energy but going through the jungle, wherever this fictional hike is happening. So that's throughput. So it's like from the front lead scout to the end of Alex, the time it takes for that entire line of scouts to move past a single location, that's throughput.
Yes.
So what about the amount of trail between Ron and me? The lead scout is Ron. What's the amount of trail? That's inventory. It has to be inventory. Ron's consuming raw materials. Ron, lead scout, raw trail in front of him. He's consuming the raw trail, and then we all process it behind it. He's starting to make these connections to his factory. Operational expense, it's whatever lets us turn inventory into throughput. So operational expense in a hike or operational expense in your what's it, 26.2 miles?
26.2. Yep.
That's your energy.
Yes.
That's what you expend. You expend energy. It's probably glucose, something. You can't quantify that model, except that I know Alex knows that he's getting tired, and he could probably see fatigue in the scouts.
Yep.
Right. It's like that's a hard one because it's a whole bunch of other factors because it's human condition. But people eventually you get tired. You cannot hike for infinity. You cannot run.
Yes.
Who's the ultra marathoner?
Oh my God, there's a bunch of them out. Steve Turner would bring back the trades. Yeah, 250. I think he just ran like a 250-mile ultra marathon. And guess what? He did have to sleep.
Yeah, you have to sleep. Yes, I know. I also know a couple of ultra marathoners, and you have to stop to eat.
Yeah,
it's like it's a whole process, but if you're consuming that trail. So just imagine Steve Turner running. Man, like actually, I can't imagine. You were a superhuman to me.
Yes,
but you're consuming inventory in front of you, and your operational expense is your energy. So to consume 250 miles, you're going to expend all the energy in your reserves, and you have to sleep to replenish and also probably eat food. And right. So that's all operational expense. That's really cool. So like the goal makes the link. If the distance between Ron and me is expanding, it can only mean that inventory is increasing. Because if the length of the trail between number one and number last is expanding, that's all inventory.
Yeah.
And throughput's my rate of walking. If it's 2 miles per hour, that's throughput. If it takes us 2 miles per hour, which is but here's the thing about throughput, it's influenced by fluctuation. So the slower the average fluctuations accumulate, they add up, and it's like the scout in front and the scout behind him takes a half inch. Let's say it's an inch just to make it easy.
Yes.
After 12 steps, that's a foot, right? So if you take an inch shorter step every time, and if you're walking at the same rate, it's a foot longer, and that adds up. And that's one scout.
Yep.
And I guess the scout behind him could make up
compounds.
But then he runs into him, and then he has to slow down, and it gets all screwed up. And one of the reasons why I left San Francisco Bay Area was because of this phenomenon.
Yeah.
If you've ever driven across the Bay Bridge, either direction, you get to experience this constantly.
Yeah.
Or even if you use BART. But the person in front of you, they tap their brakes, you tap their brakes, the person behind you taps their brakes, it compounds. And all of a sudden, we're at a complete standstill.
Yes.
We're not moving, even on 880 South. This is one of the reasons why I moved to a place where I can, like Charlotte, like from here to here is about 15 minutes.
Nice.
No matter, maybe at the worst of times, to get from the eastern part, I guess this would be the western part of the city, to the eastern part of the city, is about 15 minutes. Shoot down North Tryon Street. But that's statistical fluctuation, and it screws stuff up.
Yep.
It screws it up. And you worked in the trades.
Yes.
So you know this in a work situation more than me. I've only been a supervisor, so I've never like sat or been in it from a work standpoint. So like, how does it feel when you're in this, like, go, stop, hurry up, slow down, hurry up, slow down. I'm the guy, I guess, doing the hurry up, slow down.
Yep.
So how does it feel as a human being to be in this phenomenon?
It feels two answers. So one, I felt helpless, right? Because no matter what I do, I'm going to be accused of being behind. I'm going to be the bottleneck because of this fluctuation. And when I'm the bottleneck, it's all my fault, even though it's not my fault. And so when I say, hey, I know that your schedule says we're supposed to be sheetrocking tomorrow, but it also said I was supposed to start in-wall roughing 4 days ago, and I only started 2 days ago. All of those are facts. The response I get is, I don't want your excuses. Like, these are not excuses. These are facts. Like, so that's one. There's this defeated, helpless, like, okay, I'm just going to not even argue with this person that's ignoring reality. Now, when I started paying attention to the dollars that we were spending on labor, that was a whole nother level of stress.
Operational expense.
Yes, because now I'm like, oh my God, I got 6 people here. Our crew rate is $38 an hour, and we're not going to be producing anything. So we're going to go get busy and do stuff. But I know my production rate, we just blew it. And if this goes on for more than 4 hours, it's going to be hell to recover. And because
Herby, you got to run back. You got to run.
I got to run back. Yep. Yeah. No, we're going to work super late. And here's like a really, really disrespectful way to handle that. We're going to work late. We're going to pull a Herby and sprint to catch up. So we're going to work till 7 p.m. tonight, which is overtime. Yeah. And then I'm going to get a call from my project manager that tells me, hey, let everybody go home early on Friday because we don't have overtime in the budget. And like, negative on that one. Like, we just made them stand up their wives, stand up their kids, cancel their plans. And now we're going to say, go home early. Like, no, sir, that is not okay. So that's what it feels like.
And they've probably been like, hey, we're going to work late all week. I'm already canceled my Friday night plans.
Yes, right? Sir. Yes, sir. It's like not a good deal. So I learned how to mitigate that. And yeah, I would often tell people, like, sometimes a butt chewing is worth $10,000 because they would want me to go. I'd get you need to be out here. We're like, schedule. You're supposed to start today. Okay. So I would show up by myself and like, what are you doing? Like, where's your crew at? I'm like, I'm coming here to check to see if you're actually ready for me. If you're not ready for me, I'm not bringing a crew out here because I'm already setting myself up for failure. And the emails would fly and the threats would happen. And I would coordinate to mobilize when I could see that they were going to be ready. Because at the very least, when the team showed up, they were going to be able to produce. They weren't going to be doing busy work. And that helped me maintain trust with my team, but I got to get my butt chewed. But it saved us $10,000 in lost labor showing up, pitching washers until whoever was ahead of me got their stuff done.
Because of dependent events.
Mm-hmm.
You just got nailed and got yelled at from 2 angles. You got behind, so you're getting it from Thomas, the GC.
Yep.
And then you're getting it from the home office.
Yep.
For running over your operational expense, and they make an executive decision to shut off the work that you've
Yeah.
already planned. You're literally trapped. That's
100%.
God, that's a bad spot.
Dude, I still think the foreman role is the worst role. The trade foreman role is the worst role in construction because this situation that you just painted, the GC hates me, is mad at me. My office is on my butt, and now my team is not happy with me. Like no matter what.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
everybody is. I'm the villain in that entire situation for every stakeholder. And I had nothing to do with it.
You're in a system.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And you're in the middle. You're Herby.
Yes. Yes. Herby all day long.
Herby feels stress.
Yep.
He feels it and he tries to make up with it the only way he can. It's the only way he can by working harder. But
Yep.
it's actually, it works against Herby because
Yep.
he gets more tired.
Yep.
Because his heart rate goes up. Even though he wants to work harder, he's trying harder. It makes it hard. Like he's stuck. The only thing that you can do makes it worse.
Yes.
Do you think that contributes to mental?
Oh my God, Thomas.
Problems?
Yes. Mental problems, self-medication, the whole thing.
Yes.
100%. Like,
100%.
there was the very last project that I was on that I took over because at the time, part of my responsibility was assessing financial forecasts and labor forecasts from the superintendent. And I would assess like how close are they? And when they were way off, like, flag, let me go see what's going on. So I went out to the project and it was in bad shape. We ended up finishing like the whole entire project went about 5 months over schedule, and there weren't any new design. Like it was just because of just a horrible situation. So at that point in time, I was dating an amazing woman, and I called her and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be taking over this project. So I am not going to be as available as I have been. Like I'm going to be almost not available." And she said, "Okay." In my head, that meant I'm not going to call you or text you for a couple of months, but only in my head, right? Because in her mind, she's thinking, well, maybe we won't go out during the week and hang out. No, it was completely gone. So 3 months later, 4 months later, once we got some light at the end of the tunnel, I called her and I know like, ooh, she's probably going to be mad. And she was mad. I heard her. And she asked me, she's like, "Jesse, I understand, but I really don't understand why you had to cut me off completely. Like you weren't working 24 hours a day." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I knew the answer. The answer was because I was going to be swimming in failure every single hour of every single day until we finish that project.
Yeah. The only thing you can do, just like Herby, the only thing that you can do to remedy the situation makes your personal situation completely worse.
Absolutely. That was it. Yep. And there's hundreds of people, thousands of people in that situation right now. Millions. Yeah.
If there's 11 million people in construction,
yeah,
at least 1 million of those are in that role.
Yep. So think about that. Experiencing
the foremen who I've worked with,
yeah,
they all have this guard armor. Yep. Every one of them. Some have less, some have more. And there's I know all the combinations to break through it. Well, not all of them, but I know most of them.
Yeah.
But that is real.
Yes.
I haven't experienced that because I've never been in that position. I skipped it. Yeah. Because I've only been in general construction. So I don't understand. I can only empathize, but I work with foreman, 4-person, whatever you want to call them, people who run crews, they don't run a project, they run crews.
Yes.
And they're in this super vulnerable position. They're Herby. And if you're Herby, it sucks. And the only thing that you can do makes the situation even worse. So Herby needs some help.
Yeah.
He needs some help. He's gonna get it here.
Yes.
He's gonna get it. But I really wanted to focus on. Thank you for sharing that situation because that is the bullshit.
Yes.
That contributes to suicide, and it's fleeting. It's little teeny tiny cuts. And I was having this conversation with my father 2 days ago, and he's a veteran. He was in Vietnam. He experienced combat. He experienced stress. I was like, I've never experienced that. I've never experienced that amount of stress. I've never experienced a situation where not only was my life at stake, but I also like had to be in a place where I had to fight back and be present with that and be comfortable with that. I've never experienced that. So those who have done that, like, seriously, salute. In construction, though, in that foreman slot, it's different. I was trying to explain this. I was like, it's different. It's not that level of trauma, maybe.
Yeah.
But it compounds. And if it's year over year, year over year, year over year, year over year, and it's your job, it's your livelihood, it's your identity, it's everything. It's way worse. What do you think about that?
I know that it's horrible.
Because it's like, what's the things in caves, stalagmites and it's just coating of calcium, and it's just year over year, it just keeps growing, and it just weighs on you, and it weighs on your psychology, and it weighs in your health, and your sleep, and your relationships. It just
yes,
right. It just wears you down, and it's not as I haven't experienced either, so I can only empathize. I was trying to explain it, and because he hasn't worked in the trades, he doesn't work in construction. He's retired now, but he has experienced combat. So we were trying to like figure out like what's the difference.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's year over year over year over year over year, and it slowly wears you down until you can't cope anymore, and you're now Herby. Thing that you do only makes this situation worse.
And you know it, but the way the system is designed, what else are you like? That's all you
can't do anything else. Yes,
right.
You need help. You need help. Let's go back to the book. That for me. I want to help. I want to help, and you. So do you. So does a very growing community.
Yep.
That's so the no BS with Jen. That's the BS. It's the erosion of. It's the every single day. It's why we do a daily huddle, because I don't want another day of eroding someone's psychic. I want to tell them everything right here and right now.
Yep.
So we'll go back to the book. And so the slower the average fluctuations accumulate, they work their way back to the end of the line, which means I have to slow down. If I was Alex, all of those statistical fluctuations, they add up. And they add up. Where do they add up? At the end of the line. So millwork workers, painters,
poor guys,
electricians, the people who work in the finished trades.
Oh yeah.
We need a Veterans Day for finished trades, seriously, because you feel the pressure, and it's already on the day that you show up to install the carpet, or to polish the concrete floors. Because Herby, he's already done his damage. He's rolled through, bro.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why is because relative to the growth of inventory, the spreading out of the troops throughput for the entire system goes down. The rate.
Yes.
You're no longer going 2 miles per hour. You're going like less than that. If you take your overall throughput, so here's the reason why projects rarely finish on time against its original agreed upon date. I'm not saying projects don't finish on time. Because we do. We finish. We really try. And the company I work for try to finish on time, but problems happen and we have to make adjustments. And that's just how the world works. Right? And so that's how CPM works as well. That's okay. But we also have to understand and design in that, hey, there's going to be problems. There's going to be statistical fluctuations, and we need to have a system that incorporates that.
Yes.
That's harder.
Yes.
But that's the lesson that we learned from Herby's hike And that's the most important lesson in this entire book. So spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Herby's
Yeah.
hike is the most known lesson taught by the goal. Herby is the slowest walker. The goal for the whole troop is to finish the hike.
Yep.
But the troop does not finish until Herby, the slowest walker, finishes.
Gets there. Yes.
It is a simple case study in dependent events with statistical fluctuations. It's the same thing. We don't finish the project until the tile is set and cured and grouted and sealed, and we set, right? And you're a plumber, so you're always waiting on the tile, guys.
Yep. Oh yeah.
To set all the china. I call
Yep.
it china, but it's all the porcelain. But you feel it. You feel the pressure.
Yes.
And the pressure over time leads to, for me, I didn't feel it. I was usually giving the pressure. And like, listen, I've been promoted many times. I'm still not the prime decider of the project.
Right.
Right. So I can't like change the course of the schedule. I'm sorry. I wish. I really try. We have conversations. We do make adjustments, but I still can't make. So even as, let's say, a general superintendent, they're still like, they're the number one person on the organizational chart in terms of like field operations, but they're not the primary decision maker.
Right.
In terms of like decisions. So even then, as the highest field operation person in terms of like decision making, you don't have complete agency of your project.
Yep.
Because you have other dependent events. The design isn't complete, or there's a permit issue, or there's a payment, or there's a backlog with a nickel mine, and we can't mine nickel in Eastern Europe because of a geopolitical situation happening.
Yeah.
Even at those positions, you still feel the heat. You feel the pressure. You feel like Herby, and it weighs on you. And it did for me. Hell yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I controlled it with a whole bunch of controlling behavior, numbing, trying to like distract yourself with other stuff.
Yep.
Or for me, like I get crazy with Lane because it's like, oh, I can check all this stuff out and like not have to face reality. If we understand two concepts from this book and from the hike, dependent events, Scout 1, Scout 2, Scout 3, Scout 4, Scout 5, Scout N-1, like total throughput requires from Scout 1 to Scout last. That's your entire throughput. So the rate is determined upon how well number 1, number last go through.
Yes.
Throughput. Operational expense of your energy. It's everything that you spend to move that inventory through. The length of the trail.
Yes.
The length of time. I guess in this case, that's your inventory. And so if your inventory is ever expanding, that your throughput will inverse
dive. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell a story about my love-hate relationship with self-checkout. And I already told the story about commercial airplanes. And by the way, how do you get off of freaking commercial airplanes? You get off like Army Rangers. All the D's, get off in columns, all right?
Yes.
Get the hell off the plane. If you're next to the aisle, go. If you're the third one in, you wait.
Yes.
You can move fast. Anyways, I'll get off my commercial airplanes. And the reason why I thought I was crazy because that used to give me anxiety. And being in self-checkout or even just normal checkout, you get behind somebody and I feel anxiety. I get super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the reason why, if there's no line or if you're in first class, right, feels good. Is why? Because there's no dependent events.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, you get on plane first. They hand you a drink. There's an attendant just for you that's comfortable. Right?
Yep.
And it's the same thing if you're in a line and self-checkout and there's let's say you go to self-checkout and it's 10 o'clock at night at Home Depot. There's like 12 stands. They're all open. Man, you can breeze through. No sweat.
Yes.
However, dependent events.
Yes.
If you're forced to behind somebody with complications, more complications than you have, you're forced. that means you're dependent. And and especially in self-checkout, if someone is unfamiliar with the system, being like, where do you scan the thing? And you're like standing there, you're like you're feeling.
Yes.
I get I get triggered. And for me, I feel constrained. And if you've ever been physically constrained, sounds like you have maybe one or a couple times with law enforcement.
Several times.
Yeah. If you're physically constrained, it's a very stressful situation.
Yes.
And I feel that way with my anxiety. I feel that way mentally. I feel physically constrained. That means so for me, I feel it right here and I will hold my breath. And now I can label that and I'll be like, well, you're just standing in line at Home Depot, Thomas. Like we can persevere. But I have to label that, and then I'll be like, yeah, this guy in front of me, I'll be like, hey, the thing, it's on into your 2x4 over here. And then I've just remedied the situation. So for me, and I guess we already talked about finished trades, but they always feel the schedule the most. Or even as a plumber, you have to put all your fixtures in last because you need the finished trades to go through and set the tile.
Yes.
You feel the same pressure because they are often the scouts behind Herby.
Yes. Like,
so
it's
the
grout on the wall, please.
So it's grout it and I've been like the guy be like, just bury him, just go, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to take it all off. It's just it just compounds.
Yes.
So the hike. We'll go to chapter 14 if you want to keep going. At least do the chapter 14.
Let's do it.
Because the reason why the hike is such a good story is because we get into chapter 14, and to have courage, it requires confronting the conflict.
Yes.
If you avoid the conflict or you delegate,
that's the worst.
You delegate conflict, you are not courageous. I'll save my adjective, or maybe it's you're a coward.
Yes.
So if you do not confront conflict, and if you do not confront, we have a Herby, if we say, well, let's just make fun of Herby and just bash him, you're a coward. Yep. You're a bully. That's BS, right?
Yes.
You are not being courageous. Being courageous requires you to confront the conflict, and confronting conflict makes you vulnerable.
Yes.
Because you're doing something that's different.
Yes.
So in chapter 14, Alex has to confront the conflict. Literally, he's like, oh shit, we're not gonna make camp by dark. He starts doing the calculation. He's like, according to the schedule the troop master gave us, we're supposed to eat lunch at 12 noon. The kids are dropping out. They are beat. And they're like, it's noon now. Herby is like, Herby, he needs lunch. Let me know. I know, I can't miss a meal.
Yep.
He's like, boom, we have to eat lunch, Alex. So chapter 11 and 13, they introduced dependent events and statistical fluctuation. Chapter 14 breaks it down. And I like this stuff. This is because you have to confront the brutal facts.
Yes.
Confront the brutal facts. That's good to great. That's Jim Collins. That's another book we might cover. But
no, that's an amazing
7,
book. Yep.
McKinsey. I like McKinsey. We work with them. They're a management consulting firm, and they published an article that I copied, and it says, to aspire is essential to innovation. And they wrote, President John F. Kennedy in 1962, he said, go to the moon in this decade. Setting a goal. That's a goal.
Yep.
That's a moonshot. That's literally where we got it. And that goal, JFK, 1962, motivated a nation to unprecedented levels of innovation. And it's innovation. It's far-reaching vision. And that's why we really celebrate JFK in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And because he has such vision, and he's such a catalyst for that.
Yeah.
And if you have a far-reaching vision, it can be compelling catalyst, providing it's realistic enough to stimulate action today.
Yes.
So in 1962, it was a goal, but it wasn't crazy. The technology was getting close. We had We had a space program going. They just needed a little. And like Jeff K is like not quite a little nudge. Like it was like get to the moon before the end of the decade. So they had to get there before 1970. It's 8 years. It's a moonshot.
Oh yeah.
So establishing a quantitative innovation aspiration is not enough. This is McKinsey, not me. The target value needs to be apportioned to relevant business owners and cascaded down to their organizations in the form of performance targets and timelines. Anything less risk encouraging inaction or the belief that innovation is someone else's job. Like we need to set realistic goals, and they need to be cascaded throughout the organization. So like we're going to do this. There's an accounting piece. We've already talked about there's a financial part of production. We need to have the safety group, right? If we're going to reach this goal, we can't hurt anybody or worse. If we're going to reach this goal, we need to grow part of this business, right? So like we got to set goals. We can't just say, hey, we're going to get to the moon. You guys figure the rest out. I'm out. Like, no, we also have to work with, so I guess in the 60s, like we have to work with NASA. We have to work with Congress to get the funds approved. We have to work with land developers in South Florida to get this area built. And we have to work with a whole bunch of tradespeople to build these rockets. Oh, yeah, like they were all built. They didn't just magically happen. They were built with plumbers and electricians and carpenters.
Yes.
And so we have to set these goals. So in other words, great leaders must inspire others to take action. Like not even good. As Jim Collins, good leaders set goals. Great leaders inspire others to take positive action. What do you think about Kinsey's words?
Man, yes. I it's easy for me. It's easier for me when I think of it in terms of action. Like Adam gives me credit for this quote. I don't think it's my quote, but I know I say it a lot. Like the cemetery is full of ideas, right? Like we all have ideas. Some people have amazing.
But the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so for me, my observation is this: the difference is action, right? And to bring up another book, Leadership and Self-Deception, right? When I deceive myself or violate myself by not taking action on what I'm called to do, what is presented to me in the moment, I am violating me. And when I do that over and over and over and over, it degrades my whole identity. Now, a hard and real example, you were there when we all had dinner with Davis and Walker and Adam and Jen, and they had an idea, right? This lean symposium that's turned into a panel discussion that now we're on the calendar. We're on the calendar to have a panel discussion at Clemson University. Yes. And we have a commitment to have this same discussion at Texas A&M and College Station. That does not happen without action.
Sticking with the SEC. I see. Oh, wait, I guess Clemson's ace. Never mind.
I have no idea. But the vision,
we transcend conferences, but with action. Yes.
It's action. But the vision is a conference that happens on a regular cadence where we're bringing industry professionals to come and share their knowledge and experience with young professionals, people getting educated that are fixing to enter the industry, and expose them or introduce them to a different way of building.
That was Davis Hambrick.
Of thinking.
Davis Hambrick has maybe he's got connections at Clemson, but he was sitting at a table with someone who has deep connections.
Exactly.
Right? With Adam.
Yep.
It's like all of a sudden an idea and a goal.
Yep.
We can turn that into actions, and it's realistic.
Yes.
It's like, hey, I know. Yeah, we have a venue. We can do this. We can serve. Yeah. Boom.
Yep.
So great. I'm just going to back it up. Great leaders must inspire others to take positive action.
Yes. That's it.
That's all you do. If you're a leader and you stress somebody into action, or if you coerce, or you
Yes.
put someone in a box, you are
Right.
not a great leader. Not sure you're even a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
You might be effective for this long,
Yes.
and it's happened. There's so many examples of that happening.
Yeah. Oh hell, I did it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you have to inspire others because it has this compounding effect. This is what Alex does in this chapter.
Yes.
And what he does, he plays a game. You ever do a simulation to change people's mindset?
Oh my God. Simulations are the best way to do that. Yes.
So I got a summary of this game, the simulation that Alex does with the scouts, and it's Professor Martin, James Martin, and I think he's retired now, but he's University of South Florida, and that's where Adam Hoots, by the way, graduated from college. Perhaps Adam and James. Huh. Adam, I'm not calling you out, but if you know Professor Martin or can make a connection in South Florida.
Yep.
I also work in the Tampa, Orlando vicinity, and we can make a connection. So here's another goal. Let's make a connection with James Martin. But he basically he breaks down the simulation that Alex runs with the scouts.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And you do a simulation with the Lego and probably many others. There's a woodblock game. These are not silly games. These are simulations meant to change people's mindset. So let me I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna be like, these are simulations to change people's mindset, and it must come with that weight and that level of seriousness. When I ran the woodblock game, I don't think I gave enough to do that simulation. But go back to Dr. Martin. Game involves, so this chapter, they're taking a break, they're eating lunch, and Alex is like, I can't do this on my own anymore. Herby can't do this on his own anymore. Like, we gotta figure this shit out. So he goes, I need bowls, I need matches, and I need one die from a pair of dice. And if you go camping with me, we're bringing some dice.
Yeah.
Right? We're gonna play something with dice. But so usually there's a pair of dice involved. So there's enough. They go searching through the scouts' packs, and that'll come into play here in a second. But they get bowls, they get matches, and they get dice. Scouts' bowls, they represent individual workstations.
Okay.
They get a series of bowls, line them up. Matches, inventory.
Yes.
And then the die, statistical fluctuation. Roll a die, and statistics will tell you. It'll roll, and then the top number on the die is the number. So that's fluctuation. And that, whatever the number that you read, is the performance of each workstation. This is also known as the Parade of Trades game.
Yep.
If you played this. And salute to Dr. Tomlin at University of California, Berkeley, who taught me this personally, and has a really good white paper about why this applies in construction.
Yeah.
But this is the exact game. Perhaps Dr. Tomlin and Dr. Martin need to confer.
Yep.
But maybe not. So the bowls, they're set up as a production line, and they represent dependent events. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, where each operation has the same capacity, 6 products. So the goal is you go 6 products per day, and on the die has numbers 1 through 6. So the most you can roll is a 6, the least you can roll is a 1, right?
Yes.
So the goal is to move matchsticks. You can and in the individual workstation, you can only have 6 in there.
Yep.
I believe. So you start rolling the dice. How do you work it? You roll the dice. And you each roll the dice several times. And then every time so if you roll the dice, I get a 6. I put 6 out of the raw materials. I put them into the first workstation. Second workstation, they roll a 3. They take 6. There's 6 in the inventory. I take 3 in the inventory, right? The next guy rolls a 4. but there's only 3 in the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
We got a problem.
Yeah.
We got a bottleneck.
Uh-huh.
So chapter 14 introduces the law of bottleneck. So
Yes.
if I have the capacity to do 4 matches, yet there's only 3 in my dependent, my partner over here, slacking, only got 3.
Yes.
There's going to be a different set of productions.
Yes.
The problem with the die rolling, the bottleneck never stays the same.
It moves.
It moves. So they play this game. They play a couple rounds, and they each roll the die several times to represent the production rate. And the bottleneck nearly always appears at a different operation.
Yep.
Someone always rolls a 2 or a 1. They're like, come on, you're killing me. You ever do that in Parade of Trades?
Oh, man.
You hear that? You hear it.
The first time we played it, if we had a couple of beers, we would have been fighting, me and my buddy Jeff. Because I'm like, dude, you're horrible. You suck. Like, you don't know what you're doing. We're rolling dice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets heated.
And that's real life. It is true. Does that ever happen on the job site?
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Yes.
100%. And then I'll come by and then be like, because I'll have my favorites and I'll defend.
Yep.
I won't defend Herby. I'll defend my favorites.
Yep.
And not because they're my favorites, because I'm highly biased. Because I'm like, I need to achieve this goal. But back to the book, the game works, and back to Dr. Martin's beautiful summary. The game works to prove Alex Rogo's assumption that if each operation is a sequence of dependent events and has the same amount of capacity, then the variations in between the dependent events will cause bottlenecks to move from operation to operation, right? So if you have dependent events and you have statistical fluctuations, the bottleneck will not be the same.
Yep.
It'll move around, and that'll drive you crazy.
Yep. Yep. Firefighting, baby.
Boom.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what happens. And if you have constantly moving around bottlenecks, and we'll go back to Unico. You remember the earlier chapters? They had full-time people.
Yes.
They had mechanical engineers. These are probably people with graduate degrees who were expediters who had to look at the situation and be like, make a quick calculation and be like, hey, we need to move this, take this operation and move this ahead. And that was designed into the system.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, Alex is like, with matches and bowls and dice, and in the middle of a forest, no computers, and he's observing floating bottlenecks.
Yes.
This is why simple simulations are effective teaching methods.
Yes.
Because you can see it. It's hard to see in a factory. It's even harder to see it on a job site, right? Because it takes time. But if you see a simulation, it happens really rapidly in front of your face. And if you do it very effectively and do it very seriously, and you don't joke around, these simulations, they prove these theories. They prove them out.
Yep.
And you'll see the bottlenecks show up and people get angry with each other. And of course, we're like, the stakes are pretty low, but you get some liquid courage in you, maybe perhaps.
We would have been fighting. I promise we would have been fighting.
So floating bottlenecks will occur because the effects of variation in a system. So if you go on to study Dr. Goldratt, variation becomes incredibly important. Variation is like the scourge to production.
Yes.
According to Dr. Goldratt. It's not dogma. I'm just saying, according to Dr. Goldratt, his theory of constraints, floating bottlenecks will occur because of the effects of variation.
Yes.
They will move around. Just when you think you got it figured out, something over here will be messing around with the system. 2, because of floating bottlenecks, it's difficult to know where the bottleneck will show up next.
Yes.
So you therefore lose the ability to fully manage any process.
You're just reacting.
You can only react.
Yep.
So if you have floating bottlenecks and you don't understand what's causing the statistical fluctuations, you lose your ability to manage. You lose command and control.
Yes.
You lose the red Gantt chart.
It's gone, baby.
The red line on the CPM jumps around like crazy.
Yeah.
Ever see that? I see it all the time.
Oh, yes.
I'd be like, okay, all right, I got it. Start to start, -5. And like we have to keep the critical path on this particular trade to keep the heat on them. I've done this.
Yep.
I've done this. We've manipulated the schedule. I'm not saying
Yes.
we do this now. We try not to. It's not effective construction management. But I have done this in the past where we will manipulate the project schedule to keep the critical path on a particular sequence of events. Yep. That's just the way it is.
Yes. Yes. You know,
is it wrong? Yes.
I was working with the team in Kansas City, and what they did was, and there was heavy electrical, heavy overhead work had to be done. And it was pretty tight space. They started framing all the walls before any of the overhead went up. And I'm like, whoa, like, why are you doing? Help me understand why this is happening. And the answer I got was because it's the critical path. I said, okay, who created the schedule? Oh, well, I did. Like, okay, so you indicated that this task was critical path. Like, no, that's what the schedule said. Okay, but who created the schedule? So it was this circle of the critical path was defined by him. He created
or
the
it's
schedule.
Probably by a very small committee, I imagine.
Yes. Right. And so the reasoning behind putting the framing up first was because he said so. Right? Like, I mean, for me, that was my distillation of the whole situation. Do you realize that you've just multiplied the amount of time it's going to take to get the overhead work done that must be complete so that you can get your in wall done and cover these walls? Like, are you not seeing that? And we went round and round and round, couldn't see it. Trade showed up. They were very unhappy, lots of screaming and yelling. And he finally landed like, okay, on the next half of the building of this floor space, we're going to do overhead first. And he was doing it to prove that he was right. But he learned. He's like, oh my God, I didn't realize. And my whole point was, bro, we made this schedule. If we made it, we can change it. Like that we did, like it was made in a vacuum. And we didn't understand all the other things.
We can arrange our bowls.
Yes.
However we manage.
Yes, we can get dice that roll 3s and 4s.
Yeah, you can buy dice that roll 3s. Awesome. Let's we got to do 15 today because
let's do it.
It just so, and this is important to me. And I already said like I was in the midst of when I was writing this summary. I was in the midst of 5S in relationship. This is back in May.
Man,
we talk about like how long it takes statistical fluctuations. It's hard, but no, this is April, I guess, right? When you're February and April, March. Wow. So chapter 15, I'm not even going to recap it because I just want to get into
let's go
the issue. And I just want to take a minute to raise awareness to a major problem in the construction industry. It's major, and that's mental health.
Yes.
And I will start with what I believe, and this is only me, what contributes to our identity as men in construction. I'm not a woman. I can only empathize, but I am a man in construction, and I do identify with many of the things I'm about to talk about. So arguably, and this is arguably, there's 3 very famous photographs of the construction industry, at least in the United States of America. There's 3. And the first one, everyone knows this.
Yeah.
At least in construction. 1932, 30 Rockefeller Center, 11 construction workers. They sit on a beam.
Yes.
In I guess that's Midtown Manhattan. And I've been to the top of 30 Rock. Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Because you look down, you see Central Park. So you see this site, and they're sitting on the beam. None of them are tied off.
Nope.
One guy's got like a flask of whiskey, but they're eating lunch and they're so confident. If you lean back and like the scene, maybe you'll have to like add this to the show notes or something. But everybody's seen this photo. They're in grave peril, and they're just so confident, and they're like, "Oh, we're eating lunch." And I think it was go through the history, like it was very staged photo like that. I think the newspaper somebody was up, but it's New York City ironworkers sitting on a beam. And they're just so confident, and that's the first one. And they're all men. Yes. None of them are in. There's no safety gear to be seen. There's none. No one's tied off. There's no hard hats. Half the people aren't even wearing shirts.
Yep.
That's the first photo, 1932. 1942, 10 years later, there's a photo of a carpenter, and he's using what do they call these? It's like a drill, but it's a very famous photo of a carpenter. He's working on the Douglas Dam in Tennessee, 1942. So this would be World War II kind of time frame.
Yeah.
But the unique piece of this photograph is, and it's they're very 1940s. But he's wearing that skull guard, the composite skull guard hard hat. Every carpenter, any carpenter who's cool.
Yep.
It's the orange skull guard composite hard hat, and it's on a tilt, and he's got his leg up, and he's wearing overalls. It's muddy. Yeah. And he's working hard. Like it. Yes. His face is scrunched. And that is the ideal carpenter. He's I'm drilling into timber. I'm building a dam. This is contributing to, I imagine, the Manhattan Project. Like this is big deal. That is our ideal. The third photograph, and it's Lewis Hines, and this is in 1920, so this is way before even 30 Rockefeller. He's a mechanic. He's installing a steam pump. So this would be a mechanical steam fitter, I imagine, right? It's a very respected trade, especially in 1920, especially now. Steam fitters, no joke. Like, mechanical trades, but he's hunched over, and he has this giant wrench. Lewis Hines, he's working in a powerhouse, and he's working on a steam pump, and he's tightening bolts. And all of these photographs, they depict men.
Yes.
And they depict men with masculine qualities.
Yes.
Right? None of them are in ergonomic. They're not in safe places. None of them are safe. But they're all this ideal of like, this is what men do. That we get after it. We work in with big tools, and we work with our hands, and we sit on beams, and it's considered typical and appropriate. It's typical and appropriate. That's expected of men and boys.
Yep.
And I'm not here to say that that's bad. That is my ideal too. I have that ideal. That ideal was invested into me, that it's the best man for the job. And if you get paid for the work that you put in, and sometimes work is not ergonomic, it's not clean, you're gonna hunch over, and that's the way it is.
Yes.
And that's a masculine. But here's the thing about that: these are famous photographs they're in museums. If you go to New York City, you're going to see this a bajillion times. I might even have a picture. Yeah. I might even have the iron workers. But it's especially the iron workers, that has been replicated many times, and that is our ideal. It's our ideal. And that is a masculine thing, and that's tied to construction. All of those are trades workers.
Yep.
They're wearing that iconic skull guard composite hard hat. We still wear it today. Yep. I still think it's cool. I gotta wear one that's got a visor and all kinds of stuff. But it's our ideal. So traits traditionally viewed as masculine in Western society include strength, courage, independence, leadership, and assertiveness.
Yeah.
These are the traits of that have been studied that are masculine traits. What do you think about those?
I can't disagree with those traits because they're valuable traits. the problem is the disregard for human life, right? Like these men, they were on the edge. They were a bump away from tragic circumstance.
Yeah,
Working,
yeah. Like
right?
if you fall from that level and 30 Rockefeller Center, it's still there. That beam still exists. It's
Yep.
could be somebody listening to this on that floor.
Yep.
Perhaps.
Yep.
If you fall, you're falling into the street outside.
Yes.
So you're put at peril. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the work, the credit, you know, I had an awesome coach, Bryant Sanders, who helped me shift my vision of what the definition of hard work is. And he said it this way. He's like, Jesse, what you consider hard work is abusive, disrespectful, and neglectful work. And I'm like, whoa. And that's our industry, right? So the traits that you mentioned, valuable traits. But if I were to say, and I've said it, I was out on a project one time, we were cutting into a sanitary riser in a hospital, and we were all just going to do it, right? Because they told us to do it. That was part of our job. But I said, wait a minute, above us is the ICU, and people are up there with who knows what kind of disease, and they're putting that into this pipe that I'm supposed to cut. Like, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
We need what precautions are we going to take?
Especially the person doing like the dumping in probably has like PPE.
No, we didn't have any of that.
No, the person who is doing the dumping.
Yes,
into the pipe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, right. The hospital staff had the proper attire, proper PPE to protect their health.
But once it went into the pipe.
Well, right now we're supposed to cut into this thing, and I'm like, hold on, like, no. We need gear, we need stuff, shots, I don't know what, like I'm not just going to cut into this pipe. And in my head, I'm thinking like the company is going to appreciate this because I'm bringing a risk issue to the surface. That's not what I got. What I got was, you're a problem. You need to stop being soft and stop complaining and cut the damn pipe. I said, okay, I'm not going to cut the pipe. And I'm not going to instruct anybody else out here to cut the pipe. So I got switched to another project.
But you were being courageous.
Yeah, I don't know. I
or
was
at least
scared
assertive. I was saying you were being assertive.
Yes.
One of the traits. Look at one of the traits is assertiveness, right? Like,
yes.
No, like assertiveness is, I don't stand for this.
Yep. We are not going to do this thing.
You were being masculine. Yeah. But it was masculinity at risk?
Absolutely. I said, man, I'm going to make a big deal. I'm going to say something and they're going to all I expected was people to make fun of me. I didn't expect to get transferred off the job and be labeled a whiny boy. So my masculinity for those people, well, not all of them, but a bunch of them, I was less manly because I wouldn't take that risk. And that's the thing that we deal with out there, right? Like, oh man, come on, just get in there. You don't need shoring. What are you scared of? Oh man, just climb up there real quick. Like, don't be such a wimp. Like, and I'll say I've done that in the past. We're like, oh man, come on, really? You need a water break, right? Like, hey, dude, pick it up. Like, it's 105 degrees and we're working on an underground rough-in where there's absolutely no shade. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. People are exhausted. And I'll tell like, hey,
you're down in a ditch with no breeze. Yeah.
No breeze, just misery. And I'll say like, man, did you drop your purse? Like, pick it up. We got to get done. And so there's all these, you used it earlier, right? These little micro cuts. And I would attack people's masculinity instead of appreciating the human being that's in front of me. And so that's kind of the twist. Yes, those traits are amazing, but we got to appreciate the human being. And the pictures that you're talking about, this persona that we aspire to is also never complains, just jumps in, doesn't check for themselves, doesn't check for the person next to them, because that is feminine. Being worried about somebody else is considered feminine.
It is the inverse of masculinity.
Yes.
Or yes. I shouldn't say that. It's not the inverse. It's just not masculinity. The ideals are femininity, caring, compassion,
Yep.
right? Teaching.
Yes.
And the reason why I bring that up, because I recently had a identity kind of shift. Because when I was, looking at this, I was like, hey, and I was reading this to my better half, Angeline, and she asked me this, and it cut me just to the.
I remember you talking about this.
I'll tell it publicly now.
Yep.
She goes, and I've moved on from this, but it cut me down. She goes, do you think that those traits and that identity of construction is the reason why you got into it?
Yes.
And I was like, is that like all of a sudden you start, it's like that, yes, danger, risk, being dirty, grinding it out, and swallowing your emotions. And these ideals is also the reason what drew me in. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, what are you kidding me?
Yep.
Like, yes, absolutely it was. And I had a minor crisis. It didn't like it ruined me, but like I was like, I started to question. I'm like, is this healthy? Like, is this? And I was like, no, we need, as men, we need to be assertive. We need to be leaders. We need to be independent. We need to be courageous.
Yes.
And we need to do these things, and not in a way where it's negative.
Yep.
We can be courageous in a way that is positive.
Yes.
Right? We can be assertive and help other people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We can be assertive and teach somebody. Be like, hey, tie off now. Right?
Yep.
We can be leaders and have those great leadership qualities, and also be men.
Yes.
And have masculine qualities. This isn't a diatribe of tearing down masculinity. We can do all of these things.
Yes.
And still be really manly men.
Yes.
And so I there's a study published in the Psychology of Men and Masculinity. There's a study. There's a journal about this.
Okay.
A medical journal about the psychology of men and masculinity. There's a publication. If you ever want to dive into it, it's actually pretty good. But the researchers found that men with higher levels of traditional masculinity ideology. So it's not that I embody these ideas. Like I'm not Jocko, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's like, well, manly man, right? I'm not. I've never been in the Navy SEALs. I'm not even close. I lived in San Diego. That's as close as I got. I've been to Coronado. I've visited, but the researchers, they found the men with higher levels of ideology, so that they didn't embody these traits. They just had the ideology. They also tended to have a more negative opinion of seeking psychological help. And they also noted that a man who is surrounded by a supportive group of other men, like a church group that encourages members to share problems and seek support, they might be more likely to seek help than a man whose only social network discourages such sharing. And there's another note, they say men, and this is researchers, men are more likely to seek help for problems they think are normative, that is, problems that many other men share.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like, these are normal problems. Like, hey, I got bad hips and knees.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, that's a pretty normal thing for men. Or like, I tore my ACL or something when I was playing high school football or something.
Yeah.
So like, these are normal things. Like, we can talk about this. But it gets more difficult. So if men perceive being depressed is not normal, then if they do try to get help, they may feel dysfunctional.
Yes.
So instead, they might try to keep their depression quiet.
Yes.
And then maybe self-medicate with drugs or alcohol. And how do I know?
Yep. Same. Yep.
Right. So if it's not normal, being like, hey, you chewed me out and I feel like crap, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just going to go home.
Yep.
And like self-medicate. But here's the thing about normalization. It's been done before.
Yes.
There's a marketing campaign by a company we work with at DPR, Pfizer, and over 2 decades now, they've been normalizing a social taboo. It's erectile dysfunction in men.
Yep.
They've been normalizing this. This is probably the most private of private issues.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is a private, very, very private. This is a very, very private issue. And this is now an issue that's on TV all the time. Because there's medication for that. And for decades now that there's been Viagra and Cialis and like that's on the news.
Yep.
And it's in magazines and there's a marketing campaign. Millions of dollars were spent to normalize this taboo issue with men, and they went right at the psychology of it because if we don't normalize this issue, men are not likely to talk about this issue with their doctor. And you go to your doctor, like you're in a room with a door closed, like, and they're legally obliged to not tell anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is a conversation who should be just like, hey, I have this problem with like my intimate situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but since it's this very taboo social stigma, we don't confront that brutal fact.
Yeah.
And even though there is a prescription that could be written and there's medication that you can take and it helps to resolve that, that drug was invented and it wasn't being prescribed because it's such a taboo situation because it wasn't normalized. But over the years, we've become, we even know what like the pill looks like, right?
Yep.
What color is it?
The little blue pill.
Blue.
Yep.
Right? And it says Pfizer on it. And we've now normalized that problem, and we can now talk to our doctor about that situation. And how do I know that? Because there's research that's indicative that when we admit our problems and clearly identify negative factors contributing to them, after the ads and after the Viagra drugs, there's so much awareness about it that you can talk freely about it, or maybe not freely, but like if I can lower the being weird or being taboo just this much, you can seek professional help. But we have to seek professional help. We have to admit our problems. We have to confront them. And we have to begin to take positive steps to remove those negative factors.
Yes.
And taking positive steps to remove negative factors mean like, hey guys, like I know it looks pretty cool to sit out on that beam, but none of you guys are tied off. And we have a rule here that we have a 0 tolerance policy for anything over 6 feet. You secure yourself with a fall arrest, some kind of fall arrest system. Yeah. And that is our policy. And we have 0 tolerance for that. So everybody, please pack up your stuff and go find work elsewhere. We are assertive to that, right? We can also be strong and courageous and be like, hey, we have a problem with tie-off on this project. This is an issue. It's become normalized that it's cool and it's like, right? Like we're taking pictures with the newspaper. Be like, I'm being courageous. I don't stand for that. I'm going to be independent and I'm going to be the one who's like, you know what? I'm hooking up my D-ring and I'm gonna, it don't matter. Maybe all of these workers over here, they might be fine and they maybe they worked for 25 years with no incident. That's great. I can only control myself. So I'm going to be independent. And even though they're going to razz me and say, oh, Safety Sam over here, right? Or like whatever it is, if we don't normalize that behavior, we can never overcome it. And we'll always be fighting it because why? The ideal construction worker sits on a beam and has lunch. And that's what we put in museums and celebrate. And I'm not saying the workers that did that were wrong. That just is what it was at the time. And we should celebrate it because because they did their jobs, we can do our jobs now. Yes. But now we understand the risk. We understand the issue. And we understand, hey, Herby, You got an issue. You're slower than others. What is it about your situation that we can help? And the only way to do that is to be courageous. And you have to be like, even, and in the book, Herby's like, no, don't look at my bag. Like, no, you can't touch my stuff. Once they open the bag, they're like, you got baked beans, you got an iron skillet in here, you got all
Yep.
kinds of stuff. And until they admitted that Herby was the slowest, then they all had to agree. But they also had to agree that Herby is critical to our success of our goal. We can't leave Herby behind, because if we leave Herby behind, we don't accomplish the goal. Herby is back there.
Yep.
He's still coming in. So we have to accept the current condition as it is right now, as a situation, and lower the stigmas of just grind it out, just figure it out, just go faster, just run, get your heart rate up. Like, what do you bring your purse? And we can be men and be leaders at the same time.
Yes. Two critical thoughts that are in my head. One is, it's easier for me to think about it in terms of just being a better human, right? Like, because the masculinity and all the identity stuff, like that had me playing a different way. I was playing a bad game, but thinking in terms of how do I apply those traits to better serve another human being? It's a different view. How can I serve somebody? And then, like, this whole Herby situation, the question was not how do we go faster? The question was, how do we help Herby?
Yes.
What often happens is Herby gets cut and replaced, right? Ignore the problem, ignore the problem, ignore the problem.
Just fire Herby. Give me
Get
another
rid
one.
of Herby. But guess what? You're going to have somebody else come in, and there's still going to be one slowest person all the time.
It's going to move around.
It's going to move around. So using your word, accept the current condition as it is and help the person with the problem. And we got to surface it, right? I mean, I think of people that I've lost in my life to suicide, and a very recent situation, and I knew he was suffering. I could see it 100%. And, the number of times that I said, hey, man, I can see that you're hurting. Like, if you need, or when you need somebody to talk to, I'm here for you. The number of times I did that were zero, right? And so the appropriate thing to do would have been to say, hey, brother, I see you suffering. How can I help you? But we don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? We don't say, and we can see it. We see people suffering in their performance.
Yeah.
And we don't ask, how can I help?
Or
we
even
say,
if they say I'm fine, be like, I'm not accepting that.
Right.
Right. Because we're courageous.
Yes, absolutely.
We're strong.
Yes. It's a shift. It's a total shift in mindset. How can I help you versus self-preservation, and how can I replace you?
I can say the same story.
Yep.
And many of us can. And you ask those questions after the fact.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
How do we do that? We be like Alex, and I'll end this chapter with what he does. And he confronts the fact. He says, Herby, slowest, what's in your bag? Herby's like, no, it's mine. I'm fine. Yep. I'll keep going. Nah. What's in your bag? Open it up. And they're like, they pull all the stuff out. They give it to the fast kids. Like, here, you take this, spread it out. There's like 20 scouts. Spread out the love.
Yes.
Which, I mean, spread the load out.
Yes.
And it's like having an extra can of pork and beans in your backpack. Not going to slow you down much. Might a little bit, but not much.
Right.
Right. But having all of that burden removed from Herby.
Yes.
And not only did they do that, they took Herby, put him in the front of the line. Said, Herby, you're the most important scout out here. You're number one. You're going to the front, and you're going to lead us.
Yes.
And imagine what that did to take the burden off of Herby. And they were making fun of him. They were calling him names. They were like, man, you're slow. And it's like Alex is the leader. He's like, he makes this statement. He's the idea of the hike is not to see who can get there the fastest. It's the idea that we get there together.
Yep.
We're not a bunch of individuals out there. We're a team. And a team does not arrive in camp until all of us arrive.
Yes.
And when a leader makes that kind of statement, people can fall in line.
Yes.
And be like, yeah, give me the iron skillet. Give me this. Boom, 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 boom. Herby, front of the line. That's how Herby feels. How Herby felt at that moment. He's like, puts his pack on. Oh,
yeah.
And then he's in front. So he's like, there's no pressure. And they're like, they start encouraging him. Say, Herby, let's go. You got it. Like they're not, they're behind. We're behind you. We can't go faster. We're not going to leave you in the dust. We're a team. And I want to leave it on that because when we do that, and I'll share examples. We found Herby on my project.
Yeah.
We found multiple Herbies, and we started to, instead of firing Herby and just give me another one, we made some adjustments. I like to drop the J. We made some adjustments to our decision. And did it require changing the CPM? Yes. Did it require, my job got put on the line? They're like, hey, you're going to do this. Like, it's on you. And I'll tell the story of the next session. Once we relieved the constraint on a series of bottlenecks, production throughput increased.
Yes.
And I learned this theory from this hike. And then all of a sudden I confronted resistance because there are people who are in greater power than I who were tied to that initial biased original plan. And if I wanted to change it based on current condition, I'm going to have to take this responsibility on my own. And if it screws up, it's on your ass, Thomas. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I already figured it out. Like, we're going to be rock stars. And spoiler alert, we did.
Yeah.
But that took a whole bunch of being vulnerable and having courage, like admitting the current situation. Like, hey, we have constraints. We have problems. And like not being a coward about it either, right? Like, could we have fired this trade and gotten a new one? Maybe. Would that have helped the situation? No, absolutely not. It'd taken 3 times as long.
It would have made it worse.
So what do you think? Like, what are your final thoughts about the hike and kind of like what we talked about? Because there was a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, kind of started with the paradigm shift, right? And so paradigm shift is, how do I serve for me? And talking about the distribution of the burden, like, I guess maybe to the individual out there that is like taking it off of the job site, those people, because I used to be one of them, and every now and then I like to do it, that are carrying all this burden all by myself. It's okay to ask for help. Right? It takes energy. Like, it's difficult for me to let people look in my bag and help me with all the garbage that I'm carrying. So it takes courage, but it's what I need. And so for people out there that are carrying that burden all by themselves, invite somebody in to share the load. And for other people that see people carrying that burden, that weight, reach out and offer, lend a hand.
Yes,
like,
be strong.
Be strong, and you're gonna have a stubborn, proud Jesse that's just saying, "No, I'm good. I got it. Back off. Mind your own business." Like, next, be strong, be courageous, and say, "No, let's look in the bag and let me unload some of that with you. Let me carry this with you. Let's share that." We do that metaphorically, or we do that like for real. If I see somebody carrying a 10-foot stick of 4-inch cast iron pipe, like,
get on the other end of it.
Get on the other end of it. Hold the door.
You just somebody... open the door. Yeah, hold the door. You got it.
Yes. Like, help them, because yes, they can do it, but not for eternity. And it's human to help somebody else. And so back to the point you made about normalizing, if doing those small actions on a regular basis, you start normalizing this behavior of compassion and appreciation for another human being. And it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to look like the big softy, the babysitter, but you're not a babysitter. You're a human helping out another freaking human. Like, come on, man. That's it. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Ooh, man, didn't I tell you? That was some deep, intense, really meaningful conversation. All I got to say is, man, surround yourself with amazing people. Like Thomas really brings out the best in me. And I'm looking forward to the change that we're going to cause here in this industry. Thomas, myself, the L&M family, the No BS tribe, everybody, baby. Like, we're banding together. We're going to make something happen. Like Miss Christy Powell says, hashtag better together. So let's keep this ball rolling. Also, I want to give a shout out to the L&M family member that gave us some feedback. This one hit me right in the heartstrings. And this one comes from Miss Maria Martin. And I kind of stole this, so I don't have permission. So if y'all hear this, y'all got to let her know it's in here. Her comment is, it's the thoughtfulness and intention that y'all put into everything you do that does it for me. Looking forward to the reflection journal. That's amazing. And so that's a little teaser. Also, we're working on a reflection journal to complement the Lean and Love book that's already out there. And so we sent out the prototype of it right now to the folks that have signed up for the Learnings and Missteps monthly newsletter. So if you're interested in getting in on some of this stuff, go to our website, learningsandmissteps.com, sign up for the newsletter. And I send stuff out once a month. Every now and then I'll have some goodies in there. And in this case, we sent out the prototype of the journal. And several of the L&M family have responded and given us some amazing feedback to tweak and adjust so that it can be a very useful and meaningful tool going forward. So again, thank you very much. I know we're flooding you with content this next month, probably got another month of it between the goal and our regular interviews. So keep in touch and we'll talk again soon. Peace. Oh my goodness. You're either driving down the road or just so enthralled with this whole podcast that you went all the way down to the very, 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 very end of it. And we appreciate you. And we're going to take this as an indication of your dedication. So we got a little special request of you, a call to action, because everybody tells us that like you need to have a call to action. So here's the call to action. Be kind to yourself. Go out there and share a smile with someone. Peace.